Hello and welcome to our podcast.
Okay, I have to confess something. There has been so many times that I wanted to call you and complain about everyday problems, but then I catch myself thinking, hey girl, what do I really have to complain about? Do I really need to tell her this?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, for instance, these last few weeks, I feel like I've been going crazy. First, we had a leak in our kitchen that led to mold, and we had to rip out the entire back cabinet of our kitchen cabinet. Then our fridge broke, $400 to fix it. Then the dishwasher died, and we had to replace it. And then yesterday, my best friend, the coffee machine, just wouldn't work all of a sudden. No coffee came out. And, that is a disaster on its own, not getting coffee. But it just felt like everything happened at once. One thing after another broke down. Like, why or how? And I was so mad when I didn't get my morning coffee. My favorite time of day just got ruined, and I felt like I had to call somebody to get sympathy and get it out of my system. But as I got ready to call you and I saw your name on the phone, I paused and thought, this is just so ridiculous. I can't complain to her. She's going through so much as we speak, and she's been through so much. So it kind of feels wrong or insensitive. My problems are nothing compared to hers, to yours. Not important at all.
Yeah. This is the opening ceremony of the Grief Olympics, today's topic. I am the winner of the gold medal of pain and struggles, and therefore I don't get to participate in your struggles. I don't get to help or contribute. I'm being left out. And then I end up alone here on the podium. I won. And I say this in caps. I'm being ironic because I didn't win, not at all. I feel like I'm actually losing again when you say stuff like that, because the truth is, I want to be included. So, yeah, we have chosen to talk about this today, the thing we tend to do. We will try to explain or reflect over the fact that grievers often struggle with this. At least I think we do. The comparison, that is my experience anyway. And I think I'm not the only one. And we will try to have a conversation on this very topic. And hopefully, we will give you a slightly different perspective. Hopefully.
Yeah, I understand everything you're saying. And I think it's an important topic because it is a thing for sure. Like you said, I think we tend to do this all the time, all of us. Try to be considerate and compassionate, and maybe also then minimize our own pain or struggles. It really is, isn't it? The Grief Olympics, because I instantly felt this shame layer on top of my stress. Like I didn't have the permit to feel overwhelmed because my stats aren't as high as yours. And yes, of course, I know these are everyday problems, but in the moment, it felt like a lot at once, and I needed to vent to someone. It's good to complain sometimes, like what the heck?
Yeah, of course. We all need to vent sometimes, all of us. And, as we've talked about, I hear this all the time. People who moderate themselves to me or start sentences with, I know this is nothing compared to what you've been through, but. And that's a thing we say. That's just the way it is. But honestly, I want to stop them sometimes. And I often also do, just to kind of, allow them to continue in a way. But pain is not a limited resource. I mean, come on. And I know it's a phrase or something you just have to or need to say also. And I have done it too, for sure. It's also the polite and the correct or common thing to say. But I mean, um, this is very hard to explain, actually. Um, But of course, right after my husband died and everything, it would not be suitable and feel wrong to vent to me with your everyday problems, of course. So it totally depends on the context. But I mean, now, I want to be the friend or person you can call and tell me all about your everyday life, also your struggles. That's important to me to
Mhm.
feel that I'm being included, you know? And there's also a difference between an acquaintance you meet randomly in the store and your friends and family, like you. So now we're talking between or amongst your friends and family. That's important to say.
Yeah, sure. I think today's episode can give some perspective on just what you said there.
Yeah, hopefully. What I mean is just because I've had a big loss and now I'm going through almost the same again, that doesn't mean that there's less room here for your smaller struggles. Depends on the day, of course.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like it almost pushes me out of normal conversation. And that's my point.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. I just haven't really thought about it like that before. So I feel like it is a really important topic to address.
Yeah. And there's also another side of this, different topic entirely, maybe. But to be honest, I also struggle with this within myself because I feel like I'm no longer allowed to complain about small things or, everyday struggles. I kind of need to moderate myself because I for sure know that someone close to me is always worse off than me. So, yeah. But sometimes I feel like I've been placed in some separate division by others and also myself.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's probably not a good feeling at all. I mean, it isn't. You have to stop thinking like that, by the way. Of course, you're allowed to complain. You're a human being, and we all need to complain and vent from time to time just to get it out of our system.
Yeah, sure. Easy for you to say. No.
Right, there
But it
it
gives you
is.
perspective. It
Oh,
gives you perspective for sure, and that's mostly a good thing. I honestly do not complain as much as I might have done before. Now, after everything, it's easier to just brush it off. So, really is a good thing also, but you know what I mean.
yeah, I do. Of course, I do. Totally. And I feel like you are not the only one to feel that way. I'm sure. But back to the topic, I think it's always done with good intentions, though. I mean, the moderation, the shrinking of our own struggles, because we want to acknowledge what you've been through. We don't want to be insensitive, and we definitely don't want to compare, my coffee machine to your loss.
Yeah.
But maybe we overreact.
Yeah, I think you do. And now we agreed to use that image or that everyday conversation to kind of show our listeners our point here. So, yeah, it is a wild comparison, maybe death of a spouse versus death of a coffee machine. But that's partly where this idea came from. So,
Mhm.
but I think you sometimes do overreact or overdo, and I understand it. I really do. I would probably feel or say the same thing if it were the other way around. But I think it's important to say out loud that it's not always helpful. Context matters, of course. Again, we all know that, hopefully. What I mean is, you can acknowledge someone's story and still bring your own problems to the table. And just to be clear again, we are talking about if you are close to that person and when that's what you normally do. Maybe that's the core of this conversation. Because for me, I actually want to help or listen. I want to contribute. I want to be part of a normal life and every bits and piece of it, because that's what friends and family are for, right?
Yep.
I want to be able to call someone and complain or call for advice. We all need that.
That's the thing, right? And I can see that because that is part of everyday conversations people have. We share to vent or to complain to get it out of our system. But it is a tricky balance for sure.
Yeah, it really is. As always.
we do this, don't we? We rank it or compare it all the time, our struggles. We have this invisible leaderboard in our heads where death of a spouse gets the gold medal, being seriously sick yourself makes the semifinals, or maybe that's a goal too, actually. Relationship issues, they maybe qualify, and the broken dishwasher, that didn't even make the team, actually. It's not a big deal. I'm thinking now, I know we agreed on this, but maybe it sounds cheesy to talk in metaphors like this, but I feel like it's suitable since it was just the Olympics, and that's why we came up with this idea. So, just so you all know, it's a
Mm.
great way to get our point out.
Yeah, true. Grief Olympics. I think it's
Mm,
suitable
yeah.
because we absolutely rank it. And I think by using that metaphor, we can really picture how that feels like. Hopefully, again. But, anyways, here's the thing your nervous system doesn't have a comparison algorithm. It doesn't know what happened to me or to anyone else. It only knows that you're overwhelmed. And I think when you tell yourself, I'm not allowed to feel this because someone else has it worse, you're just adding shame on top of pain or stress. And that's not processing, that's numbing again. You are numbing your problems because mine are bigger. And if we're being honest here, there will always be someone out there who has it worse than you. Just look at everything that's been happening in the last few weeks. People living in fear and war. That is totally awful. And in all irony, even I can't compare myself with that.
Definitely. I mean, so hard to imagine for us, isn't it? So horrible.
Mm.
And our thoughts go out to all of you who have to live with fear and uncertainty. But yeah, today we're officially trying to disqualify the Grief Olympics. And that's what we chosen to call this episode. We're talking about why your pain is enough, regardless of context.
Mm. Because the moment you stop comparing your personal struggles is the moment you can actually start processing them. And that is important. And just to be clear, we're not talking about chronic complainers here. That's a different league.
Yeah, different sport entirely. It's kind of fascinating, isn't it? That we tend to rank everything: sports, restaurants, schools, looks, I mean, beauty, the
Mm.
top 10 Netflix shows, and so on. And somehow we created a ranking system for suffering too, without even knowing, maybe. We're not always aware of it ourselves. But it's like there's this invisible rule book running in the background with points, categories, winners and losers. And why do we do that? Why are we so obsessed with who has it worse?
For me, I think we're scared of chaos and we want to make our pain smaller. Of course, we do. We want it to go away because pain and suffering is chaos, regardless of the circumstances or context. It's also personal. It doesn't follow logic, it doesn't show up at a convenient time, it doesn't ask if you're prepared. It just barges in and rearranges everything. And when something feels that uncontrollable, I think we just try to organize it, whether we are aware of it or not. So we rank it, like you said. I mean, death of a child or a spouse, that's a 10. Probably also living with war and uncertainty scores at a 10, of course. Cancer, maybe 9.5. Divorce, 7. Burnout, maybe a 4, 5. I don't know. We kind of build this emotional Excel sheet in our heads. It's just a thing we do.
Hmm. Yeah, honestly. Maybe that's what we do. So silly, really, but it also makes sense in a way. Because, of course, some things are worse than others. That is just a reality. You can't compare certain things.
Of course, for sure. I guess we all know that. But what we also tend to do is to rank with conditional formatting. I mean, we rank reactions also. If you reach a 10, that's a red. Then you're allowed to completely fall apart, you know? So I'm allowed in a way. And say 7, divorce, that's Yellow, you can struggle, but you have to stay functional. If not, you will be too dramatic. And I also think there are different nuances here. You get to struggle less if you're the one leaving, then it's not that hard, not that high ranked. And then maybe all the things you said in the beginning, your annoyance of your appliances all falling apart at the same time, or say a huge line at the grocery store, that is kind of the color green lower down on the scale. So please don't make this awkward. Just go on with your life.
Yeah. Get it out and then go on.
Hmm. Stop the complaining.
Yeah. That's actually all good points there, but sometimes still good to complain about. Get it
True.
out.
For all of us, for sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of this, what I noticed after my husband passed away was that people were kind of observing me also, if you know what I mean. I mean, I felt I was measured in a way, if I can say that, or I was being analyzed is probably the right word. And here's where the ranking comes in regarding reactions. And I think this is done both, by myself and others. It's both your inner critic and people around you. You have these certain patterns or rules you have to follow.
What do you mean by that? That you have to act a certain way depending on your struggles? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. There is this strange expectation that if something scores high enough on the tragedy scale, you're allowed to collapse, to break. That's the norm and also kind of expected. But if you
Mhm.
don't collapse enough, then you're maybe cold or in denial.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you collapse too long, if you don't answer, I'm fine when you're supposed to, and I say all this in caps, then you should get perspective and get on with your life. So we're not just ranking pain, we're sort of ranking reactions too, if you see what I mean. Like the
Yeah.
Excel sheet and the colors and everything.
Mhm. Yeah, it's crazy when you say it like that. Why is it so complicated? It's like there's an invisible grief performance review happening.
Yeah. And that's where it gets dangerous, or it can be, because people might start to adjust themselves. Some even amplify their pain so it looks legit. They keep it in or shrink it because they think they don't qualify. And shrinking is very socially rewarded. It makes you easy to be around. So it makes total sense, right?
Oh, yeah. I can see that because that is easier to relate to in a way, not that deep.
Mm.
And also, no one wants to be the person who's dramatic when someone else has it worse. So we adjust. Of course, we do. It's so sad, really, when you see it from this perspective that we shrink our own struggles and reactions. And then maybe also we don't manage to heal or deal with them. I mean, if it's big struggles, of course.
Yeah, it is very sad. And maybe the most uncomfortable part about this, when we rank suffering, we're basically deciding who deserves compassion also, in a weird way. And that should bother us because compassion shouldn't be a prize you win.
No, it should not at all. It's like this rule book feels like it gives us orders then unconsciously, or
Mm.
I don't know, maybe we just think that we are doing the right thing, but really it just makes us judges. We're good at that, aren't we? Judging.
Yeah, judging. It's
Mhm.
like it turns pain into a courtroom and suddenly everyone is defending their right to feel something. I had a conversation with a friend not long ago that really touched on this subject too. She went through a divorce a few years ago and she told me she wasn't honest or open with me about how much she actually struggled during that time. And of course, I asked her why. And she said, well, your husband had just passed away and everything, and I was getting divorced, but I was also the one who left. So I didn't feel like I was allowed to be sad, especially not in front of you. And think about that ranking. My husband died, yes, she just got divorced and she initiated it. So, first of all, does that mean she doesn't get to grieve? Does grief only belong to the innocent party? I mean, that logic is actually quite brutal.
Yeah, it really is. Leaving doesn't mean that you didn't love. It doesn't mean that you didn't lose something. Sometimes it can feel like the only way forward, probably.
Yeah, exactly. She lost the future she had imagined, a version of herself, shared routines, safety, dreams. But because she made the decision, she felt disqualified. And secondly, I mean, between us and our friendship, because my loss looked bigger or worse or was according to the ranking, she felt like she needed to edit herself around me, a bit like you do when you leave me out of your everyday struggles.
Yeah. But still, I mean, we're kind of supposed to shield you in that situation. I totally get that. And she probably had other people that she could vent to about this also at that time. But to you, she edited herself.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. And yeah, she had others. But really, I'm pointing out what this ranking does. It doesn't just compare people, it can silence them. It makes them pre filter their own pain before it even gets spoken. And as we all know by now, unspoken grief doesn't disappear, it just settles somewhere deeper. But yeah, she had others, I'm glad. But still, it leaves me out and it makes me sad.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I guess, that when you heard her say that, that also makes you sad because you couldn't be there for her. And that's not
Yeah.
good either. Mm.
But of course, it's totally understandable. I would probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Hmm. I understand her in that moment, and I understand you, how you feel.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes we even do it to ourselves. We minimize our struggles by saying it could be worse, or at least it's not cancer, at least no one died.
Mhm.
And that sounds mature, maybe, grateful, strong. But sometimes it's just avoidance, also. It can be. If I convince myself my loneliness in being next of kin doesn't qualify, I don't have to deal with it. If you convince yourself that your burnout is minor compared to my life and my struggles, you can just keep functioning. And then, will your burnout go away? I don't think so. It's actually a very sophisticated way of just staying numb.
So we use that perspective almost to numb ourselves or avoid certain feelings.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, sometimes, not always, of course. And I mean, perspective is good, but not when it erases you. There is a difference between intensity and legitimacy. Some pain is more intense. That's just reality. But that doesn't make other pain illegitimate. And I think we tend to confuse those two all the time.
Can I challenge that a little, actually?
Of course, you can.
Because some things are objectively worse. Losing a child is not the same as losing your job. You can't really compare those two losses at all.
Of course not. Not at all. And that's not what I'm saying here. Intensity matters, impact matters, of course. But my point is, worse doesn't automatically mean more deserving of compassion. That's the shift. Your nervous system doesn't check global rankings before it reacts. It reacts to overwhelm, and overwhelm is personal.
Okay, that makes sense. So the problem isn't acknowledging that some suffering is bigger, it's treating bigger as more worthy. That makes sense, I think.
Yeah.
And we tend to do that.
Yeah, I know we touched on this in this conversation here now, but there is another uncomfortable truth here I think we need to address, because sometimes I don't have the capacity. Sometimes I come home from oncology with my boyfriend and I genuinely don't want to hear about work drama or any kind of complaining, really. Not because your struggle is fake, but because I'm maxed out. And when I'm maxed out, I'm not noble. I'm tired. Sometimes I'm irritated. But that's not about ranking you and your problems. That's capacity. My emotional room is cramped.
And that's actually important to say. And most people would know that too, though, be aware of when to complain and not. Because otherwise, it sounds like we should all be available all the time, and we are not. None of us are, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's just the way it is. And we have to remember that compassion isn't the same as capacity. I still have compassion, but maybe I just don't have capacity in that moment where you need to vent. That's just how it is for all of us, as you said.
Hmm, true. I think people just have to be honest and say that in a moment like that. Sorry, but I actually don't have the capacity today, right now.
Yeah, and I feel like I do. I'm very direct about this now because I have to protect myself, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like you are very good there. You always say it as it is. So that is
Yeah.
good.
But also, I don't want to be a monument. I don't want to be the reference point people use to measure themselves. I want to be a normal person. And when people shrink their pain because of mine, it doesn't honor me or what I've gone through. It just creates more silence.
So then we're not actually just honoring people who've lost the most. We might just be avoiding our own stuff by doing this.
Sometimes, yes, I think so. Not always, but sometimes. And I can promise you, being in the so called gold medal category, that's not always a good thing in this context. It hardly ever is, if it is at all. And again,
Yeah.
I do not want to be your measuring stick. Your pain doesn't have to compete with mine to exist.
That's kind of challenging, but a good reminder not to minimize your own feelings. You mentioned loneliness, maybe as a random example, but I think we need to talk some more about your situation or life right now and how lonely that can be. Because the reality of your life right now is heavy. You lost your husband to cancer after going through a few rounds of cancer.
Hmm.
Uh, then you found love again. But then 2 years later, cancer knocks on the door again. Your partner is fighting that battle as we speak. And you are now 3 years in, right? With the
Hmm.
new life with cancer. And when I look at that, like I said earlier, I sometimes feel like I had to hide my small stresses from you, of course. Or if I do end up complaining, I'm quite quick to add, I know it's not the end of the world and it will be okay or something like that because, it's just silly, annoying little things, not like changing problems.
Hmm.
And I also must say that sometimes I feel bad for having a normal life with normal problems. And I know I'm not the only one. For instance, like you said earlier, your friend who didn't tell you how much she was struggling during her divorce.
Yeah, which again is totally understandable. I mean, people are trying to be considerate, and I get it totally. As I said, I would probably feel the same way if it was the other way around. But this is exactly where the loneliness kicks in many ways. Because, for instance, when people decide my life is too tragic to hold their normal problems, I get isolated and I stop being me and I become this, I don't know, symbol, like I'm the extreme case, the one who's already had enough. And that is a very lonely place to stand. I mean, it already is so lonely in so many ways. So I need to
Yeah,
feel included.
yeah, of course. But we are really trying to protect you.
I know.
When we talk about this now, though, I also remember that's what your husband said when he was sick. He told us that he didn't want to talk about him being sick or talk about cancer or everything around that, but he wanted to hear about our lives and our everyday problems. But that was really so
Mm.
hard in general to see someone so sick and dying and try to have a normal conversation. How can you just ignore that? And how can you like pretend that you're fine
Yeah.
and worrying about stupid little things? But that's what he
Big
wanted.
elephant in the room. Yeah, I see that. But for him, it was so important too, just to get his mind off his own situation. And he actually told me that he really enjoyed just laying there listening to us talking about this and that. And if there was some complaining in there too, that just meant it was more interesting and made it more normal. And now it's the same for me. I actually want to hear about your challenges. I mean, I will let you know the day I'm already full and I can't take it. You know that.
Yeah, I do.
But I still want to be there. because that makes me feel like I'm still in the normal world with you guys, a person of interest, not just by being this victim of tragedy. And maybe they or you feel like you protect me by leaving me out, but you really don't. But it is a delicate balance for sure. And I totally get that.
That's the irony, right? We think we do what's best for you without even asking, maybe. I mean,
Yeah,
at least
that
now I know.
that is the irony. I read some research on this too because, I just had to underline my point here. And what I found was that people in grief don't just need support. We need it to go both ways. We need to feel useful, connected, and included in everyday life as much as you normal ones do. For me, if I'm only the fragile one, I shrink.
Yeah, that makes sense. Of course it does. Feeling left out is definitely not a good feeling,
Not at all.
but no. But let's be completely honest because timing still matters to you, like we touched on. Because if someone talks for 20 minutes about airport delays or a messy house or their annoying husband,
Yeah.
and you're coming straight from a meeting with your doctor, maybe, or you just have had a hard day yourself, don't you think that, or doesn't that sting a little sometimes?
Yeah. Like you said, timing is everything. And I think most people wouldn't complain knowing we just had a meeting with the doctor. But it's not like we announce that every time either. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes it does sting. But then I separate between complaints and problems also. But yeah, for sure that can sting.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say that without shame, because of course I can feel shameful for having these thoughts, to not have enough room for your struggles. But here's the truth: when you're living in survival mode, your capacity changes. It really does. Your nervous system is already overloaded, so there's less emotional margin in a way. You just tolerate less. So, yeah, sometimes I think, or even say, I love you, but today I'm trying to keep someone alive or to keep myself sane. I don't have space for your dishwasher right now. And that's not me being cold. That's just my emotional capacity, my capacity in that moment.
So it's not about you ranking the problem, right? It's more about how full your room is, your emotional capacity.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And let's go a bit back because here's where it gets nuanced, I feel like. Because for me, at least, as I said, there's a huge difference between complaining, where someone talks about the same struggle over and over and over, or just offloads negativity without awareness, and your real life stress. I mean, 4 or 5 things breaking in your house at once, including your coffee machine. I mean, that's really annoying and it creates a lot of frustration. So that's definitely worth talking about, getting it out of your system, like what the heck is happening.
Hmm.
And it could be a lot of things. We struggle with financial problems, fights with your husband, breakups, problems with your kids, losing a job, burnouts. The list goes on. That's not trivial. That's a stressed nervous system right there.
Yeah.
But as we said, what matters the most, I think, always is context and awareness. If my room is full of giant, terrifying wasps, if you remember that metaphor,
Hmm. Love that
if
one.
my room is filled with cancer, grief, and fear, and someone walks into my room with say, a tiny little fruit fly and expect me to lead a rescue mission, to be honest, it can feel quite overwhelming. Not because their fruit fly doesn't matter, not at all, but because, as we said, I'm already full in that moment.
Yeah, fruit flies are definitely annoying. But then if you do bring something up and
Mm.
then maybe the shame kicks in on both sides because I feel bad for bringing up my stuff and you feel bad for being irritated.
Yeah, that's the thing. And that double shame is what might isolate us. So the solution isn't silence, it's honesty, I think. It's like I said, me being able to say, I love you, I want you to share your life, but today I don't have space for small frustrations. And it's you being able to say, I know your room is full, I'm here, but sometimes I need to share my day too. No
Mhm.
shrinking, no podium, no comparison, just being open and honest and maybe adjusting your capacity also.
So it's less about the size of the problem, actually.
Yeah, don't hide your life from me just because I accidentally qualified for the gold medal. I didn't ask for the medal, I didn't want it. And I definitely don't want to stand on that podium alone. I mean, just walk next to me, talk to me, be honest, even if your pace looks different right now.
I think that's what hit me the most because when I filter myself around you, I think I'm being respectful, but maybe doing that creates distance between people. I feel like I don't do it as much anymore, though, as I did in the beginning, right after your husband passed away. Maybe now it's the other way around sometimes, to be honest. I share too much. I'm sorry. You are
Stop.
my therapist. But at least I know I'm getting an honest feedback from you, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But the
Same.
feeling still pops up now and then as to what I'm complaining about. What are you actually complaining about right now, knowing what you've been through and are still going through? So
Yeah,
sometimes I think about that.
of course. But what can I say? I get it. I really do. But it does create distance for sure. And again, I get why. But connection isn't built on ranking, it's built on presence and openness. And here's something very important: you don't honor someone's grief by shrinking yourself, you honor it by staying, by letting life continue around it, with it. Maybe ask about that person first and then bring yours to the table. It totally depends on the person and the context, as we keep saying, and
Yeah, it is complex sometimes.
all the time.
But the Grief Olympics make it seem like the right thing to do is to step back, give space, lower your voice. Don't bring your tiny fruit fly problems into the wasp's room. And maybe by asking and being honest of your thoughts is the answer here.
Mm. Yeah, I can talk for anyone other than myself, but sometimes the fruit flies are exactly what I need. Sometimes I need to care about your coffee machine, the small, random stuff, because then for 10 minutes I'm not in oncology and cancer and fear and uncertainty. I'm just your sister, a normal person. And I
Mm,
mean, who wouldn't go crazy without that first morning coffee? I know
yeah,
I
of
would.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's very annoying.
Yeah. And staying connected to ordinary life is actually protective in grief, or let me say, in hard times in general, because it stabilizes the nervous system. It reminds you that the world is still bigger than the crisis, maybe. They say that isolation increases suffering and normalcy regulates it. So, that says it all.
Yeah, it does. So maybe the real problem with the Grief Olympics isn't just that we compare pain, it's that we maybe also unconsciously compete instead of connect in a weird way.
Yeah, in a weird, unconscious way. That's maybe what we do. I
Hmm.
think that's the perfect picture right there. And if we stop ranking or comparing or whatever we do, we can start asking better questions. Not, is my pain big enough? But I don't know, do I have space right now? Not, is this worse than hers? But can I be honest about where I am?
And maybe also, am I using someone else's tragedy as a reason not to feel my own stuff?
Yeah, because that happens too. We point at the podium and we say, see, that is real suffering. Mine doesn't count. But pain doesn't disappear just because it's not dramatic or big, or it just waits again, as we talked about in our last episode regarding numbing. At some point, you will have to deal with it. I just think that's the way it is.
But to be clear here, I'm not saying that my dishwasher and coffee machine breaking was pain. I mean, it wasn't physical pain, and I didn't feel the need to numb it. I just needed to air up my frustration. That's it.
Okay,
Like,
stop. We
yeah,
all know that. I'm happy I know now and that you ended up telling me. You
yeah,
included me. That's the
mhm,
point.
yeah. Just so people don't think I'm stupid or something.
Stop. I hope today's conversation can be a small reminder for everyone. We're all just trying to adapt in different situations, different relationships, different seasons of life. And most of us generally want to do the right thing. We don't want to make things worse for someone who's already struggling. Of course not. We don't want to take up too much space. That instinct is human. But maybe with these reflections in mind, we can start thinking a little differently, not less considerate, just more honest. Honest about what we can hold, honest about what we need, and also brave enough to make space for both ourselves and others.
So, to sum it up, maybe today's takeaway is simple. In hard times, there are no medals to hand out, no podium, no judges, just people.
And maybe we can try to choose honesty about our own capacity. Some days you have room, some days you really don't, and both are okay. And maybe we can also practice a little more generosity with ourselves and also with each other.
And if you're listening and you've ever thought, I shouldn't complain because someone else has it worse, maybe try this instead. My experience matters, and I can still be compassionate towards other people. Those two things can exist at the same time.
Yeah. And if you're the so called gold medalist in your circle, you're allowed to say when your room is full. You're allowed to need support. And you're allowed to still want normal conversations, to be included, to laugh, to hear about someone's dishwasher or coffee machine. You don't have to live on the podium alone.
We're officially closing the Grief Olympics. Enough of that.
Enough of that. No more rankings.
No, no more rankings. Bye bye. Oh, by the way, we bought a coffee machine today. I just have
Oh,
to say.
hallelujah. Who can function without a coffee machine, honestly? Cheers to that. Now go drink your coffee. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Nina had a dream, all black and white. We were talking in English, yeah, that ain't right. Two Norwegian sisters miles apart, but that dream lit a fire, put a mic to the heart. Katrine's in the States, Nina's back home. Two voices, one mission through the microphone. Grief in life, the highs and the lows. We hit record, uh-oh, where the file go? Oh, we fumble, we stumble, but baby we shine. Lost the intro, never mind. Wi-Fi shaky, cables crossed, but our hearts stay strong, no moment lost. From a dream to the mic, now the world can hear. Two sisters telling truths with a laugh and a tear. We live, we learn, we sip, we sigh. Talking love, talking lost, let the echoes fly. Grief walks in, pulls up a chair, says I'll stay a while, yeah, life ain't fair. But we mix it with laughter, a toast in hand, finding light where the dark still stands. Ba-da-da-boo-doo, is this thing on? Mic's on mute, oh well, move along. Ba-ba-dee, ba-ba-da, take two. Oops, too late, let's laugh it through. From a dream to the mic, now the world can hear. Two sisters telling truths with a laugh and a tear. We live, we learn, we sip, we sigh. Talking love, talking lost, let the echoes fly. So plug in, lean in, let's take our time. No script, no filters, just rhythm and rhyme. We're here